The Damian Lillard era in Portland has finally come to an end. With the franchise no longer having Dame, CJ, or Yusuf Nurkic, it seems that stretch of Blazers basketball is behind them. Yet, the Blazers might be building the best future that the franchise has ever had.
With the third pick in the 2023 NBA Draft, the Portland Trailblazers select Scoot Henderson from Marietta, Georgia, in the NBA G League's Team Ignite.
Key news from the NBA, Adrian Wojnarowski is the man behind the news. Damian Lillard from Portland to Milwaukee. Woj, give us the details and all the players involved in this trade.
Jay, blockbuster deal that lands the Milwaukee Bucks and Giannis Antetokounmpo, All-NBA guard Damian Lillard. It's a three-team trade that brings Lillard to the Bucks. Portland got a tremendous haul back, including Deandre Ayton from the Phoenix Suns, Drew Holiday from the Bucks, an unprotected 2029 Milwaukee first-round pick, and a couple of unprotected pick swaps. Yusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen, Nasir Little, Keon Johnson, they go to a Suns team that was ready to move on from Ayton. They certainly saved some money with Nurkic, but a very good veteran center. But I think for Portland now, they're going to look to move on Drew Holiday. He could be a free agent next year. They are rebuilding with really a terrific group of young guards. And now this deal and the return for the Blazers, you can't really fully constitute it until you see now what they can get for Drew Holiday.
We have some breaking Celtics news to report. Adrian Wojnarowski reporting the Celtics have acquired guard Drew Holiday from the Blazers in a blockbuster deal one day before Media Day. The C's reportedly sending Portland Rob Williams, Malcolm Brogdon, and 2 first-round picks. Woj adding in the last few minutes that the expectation is that the Celtics are eager to retain Holiday long-term. He has a player option for next season.
I'm right here, yeah. This is so weird. I feel like I just got drafted. What's going on? I just feel like I just got drafted. Yeah.
What's up, baby?
I'm right here, baby. I know what it is. It's go time.
Yes, sir. What's up?
I'm blessed, baby.
Good?
Appreciate you, for real.
Welcome, baby.
No, I'm ready. What up, Rip City? It's DA, a.k.a. Dominate. Super glad to be here. Super honored. I can't wait to get this thing started with you guys. Let's get it.
Just because people think, I want to be the new Dame, I don't even think like that. There's no pressure. Like, I'm Scoot Henderson, so I've never been pressured like that. The only pressure that I have is from myself. The pressure I'm putting on myself to be the best version of myself that day, to maximize that day and to go out there and, kill my opponent. To go out there and just help my team out on the win. I don't think there's no pressure of me trying to be the new Dame. I'm not trying to be the new Dame. It's a new era for a reason, so I'm here to be Scoot Henderson.
Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of NBA Now. It's your boy Dom, and we're going to get right into things here today. Now, today we are talking about the team that has been most in the news, obviously, over the past few weeks and few months in the Portland Trailblazers. Obviously, just trading away Damian Lillard, getting Drew Holiday back, and then making a big trade with him as well. We're going to dive into all that, what I think Scoot could do this year in his rookie season, and what I think all the additional pieces around him could kind of come together to create an actually decent team here in Portland. But first, we got to start with the Damian Lillard trade. Now, I have talked about this from the Bucks perspective, so if you guys want to check that out, make sure you guys go look at that video. But Damian Lillard obviously goes to the Bucks. The Blazers get Drew Holiday, Deandre Ayton, Toumani Camara, 2 first-round pick swaps in 2028 and 2030, and an unprotected first-round pick in 2029. They also traded away Yusuf Nurkic, Nasir Little, and Keon Johnson to the Suns. Suns also receiving Grayson Allen in that trade. Then, just a couple days later, they traded Drew Holiday to the Boston Celtics, in which they got back Malcolm Brogdon, Robert Williams, and another 2 first-round picks, one in 2024 from the Golden State Warriors and one in 2029 from the Boston Celtics, giving them 3 first-round picks in that 2029 draft, which I think is something to note. Then when you look at how this breaks down for the rest of the roster now, you look like you're going to be starting, obviously, Scoot Henderson at the 1, then you're going to have Anthony Simons at the 2, Shaedon Sharpe at the 3, Jeremy Grant at the 4, and Deandre Ayton at the 5. Plus, off the bench, this team actually has a decent amount of depth with really 9 players that you can kind of play throughout the season. Obviously, they re-signed Matisse Thybulle, who the Mavs had tried to kind of pry away from this team. but they re-signed him with his restricted free agency to, well, I believe a 3-year, $10 million per year contract. Yeah, roughly $10, $11 million per year. They also drafted Chris Murray in the first round, who I think will be a solid player. He's an older rookie, so he's coming in at 23, so it's not like, he's a 19, 20-year-old coming in. He's coming in closer to, that's what part of the reason why he's at the back end of the first round, because he's, closer to 25 than he is to 20, right? You also have Malcolm Brogdon that you got back in that trade as well, which I think will be a good six-man and potentially a big-time trade candidate once we kind of get closer to the trade deadline. But yeah, this team has a lot of decent pieces, and honestly, it creates some question marks there at the center, because what I really loved was them getting DeAndre Ayton for Damian Lillard, because it really gave Scoot that kind of safety blanket as it goes for a rookie season, right? Because DeAndre Ayton's been to the finals before. He's been a number one pick. He's dealt with all the pressure in Phoenix. He finally might get a chance to spread his wings a little bit more and, take more of those mid-range shots that he likes and kind of be more part of the team as it goes for a future perspective, as the guy is not that old. He's only 25 years old, just turned 25. And last season he averaged 18 points per game. It was the second highest scoring season of his career. He also, gets over 10 rebounds a game. His blocking percentage isn't as good as it was early in his career. He actually showed, I think, better signs defensively earlier on in his career, and even at points in the playoffs, when you think back to when the Suns went on to win the NBA, or not to win, but to go to the NBA Finals, right? He was averaging like a block and a half, a block per game back then. It's kind of tapered off a little bit over the last couple of years, and I think some of that can be just derived to his relation with the team, right? Obviously, he kept wanting more out of himself with the team, and there was kind of some pushback to that, as they obviously had Devin Booker and Chris Paul at that time. Then they traded for KD. Then they ended up trading for Bradley Beal. So it looked like his role was just going to continue to diminish. And I think it'll be nice to see him with a fresh start with the Blazers. Obviously, I think right afterward he was seen playing 2K and streaming and stuff, and already had a Blazers jersey on his player. So he seems excited to be there. And that'll be very good for Scoot, who I think, honestly, if he wasn't top 3 for Rookie of the Year already, like guaranteed, you have to have him in your top 3, guaranteed for Rookie of the Year. And I've been hammering Chet Holmgren, I've been hammering Victor Wembanyama to have that chance to be Rookie of the Year. And, especially when I look at Chet and his defensive impact right away, or I look at Vic and his defensive impact right away. But Scoot's got a good team around him, and he's going to be the star player on the team. I don't know what sets you up better to win Rookie of the Year than being the 3rd overall pick and replacing Damian Lillard as the franchise savior, right? Obviously, this team never won anything with Damian Lillard, but now they have hope that eventually they'll win something with Scoot. So I think he's going to have a great narrative behind him, and honestly, a very, very good shot to win Rookie of the Year. I don't know if I'm ready to say that he'd be my pick. I think right now I'm still kind of sticking with Chet, but man, Scoot Henderson, he's going to be a dog. He's going to be a dog. I could see his point averages being close to 20 per game this season. If I had to throw out a number, it'd be about 17 to 18. I also expect DeAndre Ayton's averages to go up. He's averaged 18 before in his career, and I think he's going to be a primary scoring option on this team. So I could see him getting closer to maybe 23, 24 points per game and potentially making an all-star team if this team is able to win games, which that's a big question mark, right? The question there, though, is how much playing time is Robert Williams going to get? Because I don't know how much Robert Williams and DeAndre Ayton can share the court together. Now, DeAndre Ayton has some sort of a mid-range, but Robert Williams can't shoot outside of the block. And although he has some health issues, and DeAndre Ayton hasn't ever played 82 games in his career either, playing 71 the most, which was his rookie season, I don't think that it'll be too much of an issue, but I am interested to see how Robert Williams fits in with this team. As personally, when I saw that trade go down, I was like, oh, Robert Williams is a great piece to get, but where does he fit in on this team? And that's a big question mark, especially because you can kind of start breaking this down with a questionable shooting, especially off the bench, right? You got a guy like Matisse Thybulle, who we know is not a great shooter. You got a guy like Chris Murray, who's coming in as a rookie, and he probably won't replicate what Keegan did, but he projects to be a decent shooter. But at the same time, he's a rookie, so there's a lot of adjustment there. And then you also have a guy like Scoot, who, yes, hopefully he can develop a jump shot, but isn't necessarily considered a great shooter right now. Same with Shaedon Sharpe. He's considered about a league average shooter, maybe a little bit below. So there does start to become a shooting issue on this team. Now, you do have guys like Jeremy Grant, Malcolm Brogdon, Anthony Simons, who are capable shooters and respectable shooters in the league. Some of them having kind of hot hands, being better on some nights, worse on some nights. But that does become a potential issue that this team might face. And then, after you look at, I think, the main two guys in Scoot and Deandre Ayton, obviously you'd love to see some development out of Shaedon Sharpe. I think he shocked a lot of people last season because we didn't see him play in college. But what he was able to do last season was really kind of build a fan base behind himself by actually having a pretty decent season last year. Then beyond that, you also have Jeremy Grant coming back, who's obviously on a huge contract, and you'll probably look to move within a couple years, but he will be a good veteran piece for this team. He's averaged 20 before. He's been in a situation where he has to be a little bit more of a mentor. He's also been to, the conference finals before when he was with the Nuggets. So, his experiences in Detroit and in Denver, I think, are going to be very crucial to help him kind of get these other guys around him and try to win basketball games. Same with Malcolm Brogdon. Malcolm Brogdon has been around with the Bucks, with the Pacers, with the Celtics. He's been on good teams for the most part throughout his entire career. He might not want to lose, right? So I do think he's going to be your bench guy. I think he provides defense off the bench. I think he provides some shooting, some leadership. He is the oldest guy on the roster by quite a bit. Him and Jeremy Grant are 31 and 29 respectively. The rest of the roster has two guys above 25, and that is Robert Williams and Matisse Thybulle, who are still 26 years old, still pretty young. Obviously, probably not developing much more, but still entering into their prime at this point, right? They're not anywhere near the tail end of their careers, right? So I do expect Malcolm Brogdon to be a big candidate for a trade come trade deadline. It'll just depend on who the suitors are. Obviously, when we're talking about suitors for him, we've heard the Clippers wanted him. I could see some other teams like maybe Spurs and the Mavs get him in there as more of a veteran guy, especially if the Spurs are able to get into a playoff presence. Then I could see, they really only have Trey Jones in there as a point guard. I could see them wanting a little bit more leadership in that locker room with obviously Popovich there. And then the Mavs, if Kyrie is injured or something like that, they have the money in which they could go get a guy like Malcolm Brogdon, or maybe more likely for the Mavs, Robert Williams. I could see if, initially the Rashawn Holmes and Derek Lively combo isn't enough for them at center, maybe going to get a little bit more of an established guy who does have the injury issues, but would fit perfect next to what Luka does. So I do expect, Robert Williams to potentially be a trade candidate, as again, he's got a questionable fit on this team. Malcolm Brogdon to be a potential trade candidate. He's only got 2 years left on his deal, making about $22 million per year. And, once it comes to trade deadline, that's essentially an expiring contract for next season, plus a guy that can contribute right away, right? And then potentially Matisse Thybulle. I don't know if anybody would go after him. I think he got a no trade clause, so it would only be a team that he'd want, and you wouldn't get much for him. So if you are the Blazers, you're probably looking to keep him at that point because you kind of committed a lot to him. There's not a lot of guys that have gotten no trade clauses, and we saw how little Bradley Beal himself was traded for because he had that no trade clause. I think you would probably still get some value back for Matisse, but it would be very dependent on where he wanted to go. So that is something to consider. As for the rest of the team, though, I think it is going to be a nice, fun, young team that maybe doesn't make the playoffs this year, right? I think, when you look at it last season, this team wasn't very good. They were 33 and 49. There's a reason they got the third overall pick. They just traded away their best player. And although they brought in a lot of different pieces and they have this more youth movement going on, so it might be, a better locker room chemistry, as I think last year there was, a lot of injuries and, question marks, especially towards the end of the season. I know Dame had wanted to come back, but I know that front office actually talked to him about, sitting out the last few games or whatever. And so then he did that to get the draft pick so that they could try to trade that away. They ended up just using it. So it was a lot of stuff that went on, kind of a messy situation, but you can kind of look forward. Obviously, Chauncey Billups is still coaching this team, and I think he'll be phenomenal for the young guards on this team in Scoot and Anthony Simons and Shaedon Sharpe. I think he's going to be great to kind of help continue their development. And I think we saw some of that even just last year with Shaedon Sharpe, how much of an impact it had to have such a good, former all-star level point guard in Chauncey Billups in the building, kind of helping him understand and, get used to the NBA game right away. Now, if I had to give a projection where I see this team finishing, it might be higher than 13. It might be lower. Honestly, there's a lot of teams in the Western Conference that are going to be fighting for playoff spots. When you look at even just the play-in, right, you have at the bottom of the play-in, the Pelicans, the Thunder, Dallas just missed the play-in, and Utah just missed the play-in. And I don't think any of those teams are going to be trying to lose. I think Dallas made good improvements. I think OKC will have good improvements. If Zion's healthy, the Pelicans will have good improvements. The Jazz brought in more young guys. They brought in John Collins. They're going to be looking to try to win more games. I assume that they own their first-round pick, though, so they might be willing to kind of lose some games toward the end of the season. But I do think Portland will fall in that similar range. And I mean, San Antonio and the Rockets are looking to win more games. We saw the Rockets bring in more veterans, and obviously San Antonio brought in Vic, so they could potentially be trying to win more games. Or if they shut down Vic early, we could see them, kind of trickle down the standings at least towards the end of the year. It'll all depend how this Blazers team comes out and competes night in and night out initially. I do think that they can compete with most teams, at least in the Western Conference, not necessarily like for a playoff spot or anything like that, but I do think night in and night out, they have good talent on this team. They have good defenders, they have good scorers. They kind of have a pretty simple breakdown of their roster of who's going to be scoring, who's going to be, kind of second option, third option, etc., right? But also enough of an overall scoring presence across at least that starting lineup in which, you could easily see Scoot averaging like 30, or not averaging 30, but getting 30 on any given night. You could easily see Shaden getting like 20, 25 on any given night. Same with Jeremy Grant. Anthony Simons has that same ability. And if Deandre Ayton can kind of unlock that, next level that we've been wanting him to do so for years at this point, being a former number 1 overall pick, there's a lot of guys that can get you 20 any given night that you want. And even off the bench, a guy like Malcolm Brogdon as well could do the same. So there's a lot of parity across the scorers on this team. And so I think that'll help night in and night out to win games and try to really, be a competitive team, as obviously you do own your pick this year and you have more picks, but you have like the Golden State pick in this next draft, which I don't think will be, the most fantastic pick, but it should help. And especially when you're looking at like the bottom of the Eastern Conference, the Blazers should be beating some of these teams like the Charlotte Hornets, like the Washington Wizards, even maybe you could throw in the Chicago Bulls who were in the play-in last year. So if the Blazers were in the East, they might be able to make the play-in. But because they're in the West, I'm going to give it 2 or 3 more years before this team really gets an opportunity. I think you'll need some fall off from some of the top teams or some injuries to happen or some crazy development out of DeAndre Ayton or Scoot to kind of catapult yourself in, which isn't impossible. Those are very realistic things to happen. Obviously, we see injuries every year, unfortunately, and we see, new players and new stars arise every single season. So I do like this Portland Trailblazers roster. I think they have a very bright future, and I'm excited to see if Scoot Henderson can win Rookie of the Year, or even if DeAndre Ayton can win Most Improved. But with that said, appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you guys drop a like, subscribe for more, and I will catch you all next time. Peace out, guys.
I could never be replaced, they'll know sooner than later. An arrow pointed at who assumed it was greater. Amazing what I get in return for this labor. I continue leaving trails, but won't be for the Blazers.